How to be a successful immigrant in North America. People say the USA is a melting pot. This is what I picture when I hear that hellish thought as a description. A bunch of monstrously obese, morbid European corporate leaders, politicians and coarse elitists, hegemonically chopping up all the diasporic ingredients in a pot with a lot of genetically modified, salty and oily, deep-fried and boiled pieces of rotten meat from all of the tortured peoples and slaughtered species bordering extinction. They'll forcefully take your distinctive essences and herbs like sage, saffron, curry, and basil and mix them with preservatives and chemicals. It's okay though, once they're thrown away for that long in this mixture of soulless things, their distinctiveness will slowly fade, so you don't miss it and nobody will taste it in the end. They'll eat most of it anyways. They need to taste test it before you can all be sated, and you won't be truly, but they'll say they're just keeping it for you to better preserve your culture. The way they see it, it spoils your teeth. It's been turned into a toxic substance, but maybe you'll eat what they left to rot and fester like your forgotten ancestors in their dungeons and unmarked graves and plots that they plundered while they blotted your sons with their whitewashed messengers and hunted your daughters along with all genders of oracles and non-binary prophets for their following festin to soulfully dismember them at the solstices like winter and spring. Colonial seasons they imposed on the six pre-existing, like the Crees and peoples of Treaty 6 and beyond, like the Six Nations, like you were some sort of sick patients in their asylums. Be patient and silent. Be respectful. If you're psychotic, take some nauseous medications to calm you. Now wait for your turn, and they will serve you if you're fortunate. Cause hey, after all, America is the whole continent, so you're all a part of it. Stop complaining, all of you. Meanwhile, a bit higher in North America, Canadians say that this place is a multicultural mosaic of races, but I say it's a mosaic of racism, and it's an extensively selective process involved in which races and parts of their population are accepted and others are not, especially if your thoughts or expressions aren't blessed by the God of Christians and you don't believe in Jesus. Then you're not a part of it at all. You're just one more discarded piece or shard that got lost in the darkness of your features. See, natives and Métis aren't seen as Canadians when they starve in the streets or try to barter for the peace or change that nobody seems to offer or bother to keep in store for rainy days when it's cold and dark. Yeah, sure, whatever, they were the First Nations, but they signed a lot of treaties and papers and they lost their peaceful and sacred places to war, disease, and racism. They were conquered and we should all get over it. Or so the story goes, and it's told so soberly and they pretend to nobly grieve when they slowly speak it, but it's okay. Canada is post-colonial, yay! And we're an almost perfectly clustered multicultural mosaic where each culture can show their names and beliefs if they don't disobey our own and coincide with the paintings we own that display who they are like cigar store Indians, and if they explain them in a way that doesn't make Canadians feel grief or feel disrespected. What a bizarre story of idioms. This is our home on native land. Come share it, but we own it. And we will ban you if you can't pay or invest in our lands and great nation. Now please smile for the picture we're taking to show every ethnicity how accepting we are. And after that, you can stay in our closet. It's decently sized and there's a lot of space for your thoughts inside it. Now pray to God and be prosperous. Or maybe pray to God that you may be prosperous. It's kinda shady, but it seems obvious what you ought to say if you want to make it. Be a carnivore, barter with Satan, but not like a pagan. Just pretend that you talk to our God and relate to us. It's easy, right? That's what they say to us. And now finally, across these borders to the part of the continent that solely created them, with colonial administrations that soullessly desecrated most of the globe for their greatness, and were so bold as to state that they were the noblest of creation. Europe's Caucasian Occident, home of the greatest of all civilized nations. So they say, and if you're applying for immigration in these parts, you need to try to relate a lot harder than previously applies, and specifically as always, and there are not a lot of exceptions. If you're Islamic or Gypsy, this is probably predictably impossible, unless you're statistically a part of such a microcosm of these nations and tribes that happens to be a postdoctoral scholar, an author, and a Nobel Prize laureate, along with perhaps a polyglot, a translator, and a prof, and maybe a few more aspects relatable and laudable. But if you happen to be a hip-hopper, an artist, and an activist on top of that, and you talk of marijuana and psychoactives as ways to solve crazy problems, psycho and hapless imposters and belligerent liars like Big Pharma and their passively ignorant doctors with massively rigged and toxic prescriptions to harm you, synthetically and factually limit the processes of matchless and limitless thoughts. Mad Christians from the populace that existed in Caucasus and prehistory will call you blasphemous and appalling, inadmissible like the ghastly, limited, narrow-minded, and harrowing scientists clearly trying to trap you in infinitely terrible mirages they call empirical science or academics. Obviously, they never heard of the concept of science fiction as speculative, time travelers, quantum physics, or progress that's logarithmic. Say sayonara to your happy karma, honestly. That's not just statistics. That's a promise from the God of the West. It's not gonna happen for you. It's always a test. They'll probably block you financially like embargoes with banks and corporate gangsters, with all the rest of Gaia that's conscious and knows democracy is all just a jest. Cops will always arrest or harass you. Colleagues will be morbid and skeptic when they razz you. Family will warn you of stats and problems they're fond of manifesting when they constantly talk about them as facts, till that's what they are, as plans destined. But at this point, a sorely lacking and bizarre yet also handsome existence will be what you always actually plan to expect. People will ask you to answer questions about ethnicity, linguistics, resistance, and the math of destiny, and many will actively discredit you as you answer them, and laugh your ass off at the idiocy of humanity's recessive genetics, grasping onto the strand that economic dominance and egocentric prominence equals godly status, regal sentience and competence, and nonconformity and noncompliance means that you will fall to the bottom and be a lost cause while they walk on fecal stretches of waters made up of bleached and modest droplets forgotten. Welcome to the Western hegemonic system, my blessed brethren and sistren and non-binary citizens. This is your map to this section of the Occident. Do not hesitate to knock at random doors and rely on the kindness of all. Request any form of assistance you can ponder or think of, and rejoice in this kingdom.